Ladies and gents, boys and girls, welcome. Thursday, January the 11th, 2024. Hope you are all doing well. Chris Phillips here, your host of SEC Unfiltered Live. I see Bruce, Ethan K, Travi, John Edward as well in the chat. Appreciate you guys being here. Also, those on social media, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, X, you're on Twitch, maybe you're in our SEC Unfiltered Discord and you're commenting in there in the live streams tab. Appreciate you all, each and every single one of you being tuned in, guys. We have got, dare I say, we've got the biggest show in the very short history of SEC Unfiltered Live. And if it had not been for yours truly being out at dinner last night, we would have had an emergency live show. We did not. That's my bad. Won't happen again in the future. At least I hope. But either way, we are talking the greatest of all time when it comes to college football coaches. The greatest of all time has officially hung it up. Nick Saban announcing his retirement late yesterday afternoon. Of course, guys, I'm going to give my immediate reactions, my full thoughts on that. Also, what is next for Alabama? Who are the top candidates to take over that job? What we're hearing, right? The rumor mill is already circulating. We saw, is Dan Lanning in Tuscaloosa? Our good friend Josh Pate of CBS Sports, he shot that down with the quickness. You got Greg McElroy saying things about Lane Kiffin. The wheels are turning. A lot is happening. Greg Byrne and the folks down in Tuscaloosa, they are not resting. I doubt they got much sleep last night, admittedly, guys. Also, we are touching on some college basketball, guys. It was a really fun night last night on the SEC. Couple of upsets. We'll get into that. Also, guys, huge guest, by the way, today. Massive guest. If you love college basketball and you follow college basketball, you probably recognize the name Jeff Goodman. He's worked with CBS. He's worked with Fox Sports. He's worked with ESPN. He's got his own entity now called the Field of 68. This is a dude that takes a back seat to nobody when it comes to college basketball coverage from a national scale. He joined us, that conversation airing later in the show as we talked all things SEC basketball, national college basketball, the Final Four, right? The NCAA tournament, a lot. We go into deep detail on and discussion. And of course, guys, end of show, we are taking your questions, your comments, and your voicemails at 843-790-3377. Again, guys, this is a day most certainly I want you all to interact, to be a part of the show. Your thoughts on Nick Saban retiring, your memories. What do you remember most from the Nick Saban era during his time in college coaching, whether it be at Alabama, it be at LSU? Maybe you can go all the way back to Michigan State days, right? What do you recall most? Your thoughts on what's next? Remember, guys, all of that, much more. I want to hear from you. 843-790-3377. I see babes and waves in the chat. Caleb's in here. Xavier, Justin, what's going on? Thank you all so much for tuning in. And like I mentioned, guys, more often than not, when something like that happens last night, we're going to have like an emergency show. We're going to go live immediately. I was out and about, was not able to do so. So we sit here today and reflect on, again, like I mentioned, guys, SEC Unfiltered, the short history of SEC Unfiltered. In my opinion, this is the biggest news story. And there's a large part of me that is almost heartbroken in a way that I'm not going to be able to cover Nick Saban in my first full football season being SEC Unfiltered. Either way, guys, let's get into the news. The GOAT has officially hung it up. Nick Saban retiring from college football head coaching as he announced late yesterday afternoon his retirement as Alabama Crimson Tide head football coach. Guys, it's the irony of this is just a couple days ago, I go on that SEC podcast with Michael Bratton, and he asked me point blank, Chris, what are your thoughts on Nick Saban retiring? When is it going to happen? Do you want him to retire? What do you think the ripple effect will be in the SEC and college football? And I mentioned to Mike that I didn't see it happening right now, right? But I thought, of course, right, we were on the back nine, if you will. Within the next 5 years or so, we'd probably see Nick Saban call it a career. I thought he'd most likely run it back, had most of his team, his Alabama team, coming back next year. Jalen Milroe already announced that he was returning. And so I figured, you know what? At minimum, we're going to get Nick Saban back in 2024. He's going to make one more run at this thing because 12-team playoff, Bama was going to get in. They're going to get in, no doubt. And he's going to have a great opportunity to, at minimum, get back to a national championship game. Before we dive into, guys, because I got a lot of thoughts on the why of this and just overall feelings, what it means for college football, for Alabama, obviously. Let's take a moment to look back on the numbers and really pay tribute to the greatness that was and is Nick Saban. He's the greatest of all time, guys. There's never been a greater college football coach than Nick Saban. And we're talking like Bear Bryant. Like, you go down the list, guys. And Bear Bryant was fantastic. But for Nick Saban to do what he did in the modern era of college football, it's unlike anything we've ever seen and more than likely will ever see. Nick Saban by the numbers, guys. And this includes his stints at Bama, LSU, and Michigan State. 7 national championships. Guys, he won 6 at Alabama. The only coach ever to win 3 national titles, or win national titles, in 3 different decades. Think about how crazy that is alone. 11 SEC championships. 292 wins. Good enough for 6th all time. 201 wins at Alabama. Second most at a single school in SEC history. He also won the MAC. Who knew? He won the MAC. 9 wins against AP number 1 teams, the most ever. 9 wins against number 1s. 104 wins against AP ranked teams, most ever. 109 weeks ranked number 1 in the AP poll at Alabama, more than any school all time. Guys, 16 straight 10-win seasons. The longest ever. 19 bowl wins. That's 3rd all time. 49 first-round draft picks. Most all time. Guys, Nick Saban had more first-round draft picks than he did losses. And also made the college football playoff 8 of 10 years. And guys, honestly, I just ran through those numbers. The numbers don't do justice of his greatness and what he meant, especially to Alabama football. Guys, here's how I think you know you're starting to get old. I'm old enough to remember when Alabama sucked at football. You're like, wow, you must be ancient. I'm old enough to remember when Alabama stunk at football, right? I can think back to 2004 when a South Carolina Gamecocks team that was a 6-win ball club, wasn't very good, wasn't exceptional, went into Tuscaloosa and beat the Crimson Tide. I think the final score was like 24-3. I'll never forget the shot of Bama fans leaving the game early. Like, Alabama football was not good at that time. I remember Bama not being very good. And Nick Saban takes over. They have that rough first season, right? Lose to La Monroe. From then on, our entire lifetimes have been Alabama football being dominant. And it's because of Nick Saban. I mean, that's the craziest part, guys. When you think about Saban's tenure at Alabama, like, they didn't have a down year. A down year for Alabama was winning 10 games. That was a down year. They never had a year in which, they went 8-4 or 9-3 inexplicably missed on a quarterback or missed on this, missed on that. They always found a way to be dominant. And they were that. From the recruiting aspect to on the field to Nick Saban, evolving with the times and staying ahead of everything and being this sort of lord of college football, really, truly. Now, as I mentioned, it was a bit of a surprise. It's a surprise and it's not. You know what I mean? It's a surprise and it's not, because I really thought Nick Saban, that ending to his career doesn't feel right. Like, it really doesn't. And I know Michigan fans are taking great joy and great glee in how this Nick Saban tenure has ended. And Michigan fans feel like they knocked Nick Saban out of college football. But I've got reasons why, I think. More on that in a second. But, we knew we were getting closer to this day, right? We knew that this day was sooner rather than later. We were nearing this point. And I mentioned on Mike's show a couple days ago, guys, that when it happened, it was going to be a bit of a shocker for us all, right? It wasn't going to be one of those things where, okay, this makes perfect sense. This is the time. Nick, it's time for you to leave. And that is certainly the case with it happening right now. I mean, again, guys, you can't say enough good things about Nick Saban's dominance. Just like what he's done. I mean, you go back to LSU, guys. He turned LSU into what they are now. LSU, he brought the first title to LSU back in 2003. I recall those teams. All Nick Saban ever did was win. I mean, and you know what, too, guys? He did it the right way. Did it clean. Like, there never was any scandal or this, that. Of course, there's the jokes of giving recruits chargers or what have. Like, I totally get it, man. Like, it's, you're going to be scrutinized and you're going to be highly criticized when you are the very best at what you do, right? There's going to be people that are jealous, they're envious, it's just the nature of the beast, right? We all cheer for someone on the way up, and when they get to that pinnacle, many people do their very best to pull them down and come back down to my reality, right? I don't like the way you do things, what have you. So, but the only reason folks hated Nick Saban is because of how great he was and how great he is. And so it is a surprise. It is for it to happen now. I really thought the 2024 Crimson Tide team had a chance. Way too early predictions and way too early head coach rankings. Guys, I guess they were way too early. I guess they were way too early, right? Because now Nick Saban's not even there anymore. And who knows what Bama's going to be? I mean, I had Bama 11-1. I thought this team with Milroe coming back and a lot of that young talent returning, Nick Saban returning. Kevin Steele had just retired, but it's Nick Saban, man. He's going to go out there and get whoever he wants, and that guy's going to run Nick Saban's defense, and they're going to be just fine, right? They're going to be just fine. They always have been. That's another thing, guys. The fact Nick Saban, you look at his coaching tree. Like, when you talk about his legacy, it's so much more than just he did on the field with his teams. Look at the coaching tree, guys. Look at the amount of guys who are head coaches right now that learned under Nick Saban. Kirby Smart, the most notable. Steve Sarkisian, right? The list goes on and on of great coaches in college football right now that learned under Saban. And for a while, the SEC, I think, got into this bad habit of just hiring Saban disciples, right? And not necessarily thinking outside the box. But it's in respect to who and what Nick Saban was and is for college football. Now, why did he hang it up? None of us probably will ever know the answer, at least coming from him. We're all kind of left sitting here wondering why. And I'm sure Nick Saban one day is going to do a documentary or write a book, and he's going to detail, right? His exit from Alabama, his retirement from college football, and he'll probably at that point shed some light. But I can't help but believe the way college football has changed over the last couple of years, I can't help but feel like that is a major factor in this decision for Nick Saban. Because here's the thing, guys. When you are someone like Nick Saban, when you're a competitor like Nick Saban is, you never stop loving the pinnacle. You never stop loving the end result. What you stop loving is the process. What you stop loving is the work. And I'm not sitting here saying that Nick Saban didn't like to work hard anymore. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, did Nick Saban love the transfer portal? Did he love NIL? Did he love what that turned the game into? I don't know that he did. We actually know for a fact he wasn't all that fond of it. Did he love the expanded playoff? Nick Saban still loves the pinnacle, guys. He's a competitor. He no longer loved the process. What it took to get to that pinnacle. And I don't think Nick Saban is alone, guys. I don't think he's alone when it comes to coaches that aren't all that fond of working 365 days a year, 24/7, because that's what the portal and NIL has done to college football. From recruiting the high school ranks to now you got to retain your own roster. I think he still loved the pinnacle. I just don't think he any longer loved the process. And I don't necessarily blame him, guys. You know, this reminds me of when Steve Spurrier walked away, and I had the privilege and the honor of sitting down and chatting with Brad Lawing, former defensive line coach that had stops, of course, at South Carolina. He was at Michigan State with Nick Saban, worked under Jimbo Fisher, worked at Florida under Will Muschamp. And so I talked to Brad about this, and I talked to Brad about Steve Spurrier. Why did he retire? What happened? You know, do you think the way college football evolved in the recruiting, because we had heard stories the end of his tenure at South Carolina that Steve Spurrier, he wasn't all that interested in recruiting, guys. He wasn't all that interested in the nonstop work that being a college football head coach became. And I'm not saying Nick Saban was cutting from the exact same cloth if he wants to go play golf 6 months a year, but you don't think Nick Saban wants to be on the boat, be out on the lake 2 to 3 months? You know what I mean? Like, I think we would be naive to think that didn't play a major role in his decision. A guy like Nick Saban never stops loving the pinnacle, guys. What they do stop loving is the process. What they do stop loving is the day in, day out grind that it takes to get to that pinnacle. And that grind has never been more fierce and more intense than it is right now with the transfer portal and NIL. And I just think a guy like Nick Saban looked at it and said, you know what? I still love coaching. I still love the pinnacle. I no longer love the process. And I, for one, can't blame Nick Saban. Because, guys, being a college head coach now, I mean, I know, you know, listen, when you make a lot of money, there's no sympathy. I totally get it. When you make a lot of money, people don't give a damn. But these are still human beings. There's still this life balance to consider, right? They have families. They want to do other things that don't involve work, right? They're just like everybody else. And I just don't think these coaches have much of it. I mean, I low-key feel for these coaches that are having to go out, recruit a high school roster, retain their current roster, recruit a portal. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. But again, I don't expect anybody to feel bad for Nick Saban or any other coach out there. Now, guys, the ripple effect this creates in college football, I think it's going to be really fascinating to watch. Do we see other coaches, other older coaches maybe consider hanging it up? Do we see, you know, obviously folks are going to be, I think there's going to be agents working like, hey, your head coach might be a candidate at Alabama. We better up that contract, if you will. But what's so fascinating, guys, is we now enter this new era of college football, right? This 12-team college football playoff era, this transfer portal NIL era where the madness is only increasing, right? I see a video this morning of some NC State defensive back sticking with NC State. You know who's doing the video of like, I'm coming back? It's one of the guys with the collective. The collectives run the sport at this point. The collectives run recruiting. When it comes to roster retention or even high school recruiting, let's not fool ourselves here. Let's not fool ourselves. But when it comes to building the roster, the collectives run it. The head coach is just there to kind of facilitate a relationship, but like the collectives run things. Right? So, I mean, in this new era of college football, we now enter it without Nick Saban. We now enter it without a figure that has been around for ages, for eons. It feels like, at least. And, you know, it's funny. We talk about who should be the commissioner of college football. I don't know if he'd be interested, but Nick Saban wouldn't be a bad choice. At least being on the panel. That seems like a guy's opinion that would be valuable, especially from the actual, you know, I don't know, football side of things. Now, where does Nick Saban go from here? You know, folks have talked about College Game Day, or maybe he becomes a personality of sorts. I don't know that he's that, call it for what it is. I don't know he's that captivating, but, man, if you have Nick Saban on a panel, I'm going to pay attention. You're going to pay attention. We're all going to pay attention, right? So it'll be interesting to see what his next move is, if there is a next move. Maybe he just wants to chill. And you know what? Nick Saban has earned that. He has earned it. Something else, guys, by the way, I forgot to mention before I go into kind of the next phase of this conversation, what it means for Bama, et cetera. Speaking to his greatness, guys, and I don't know if it was, I think it was our good buddy Chris Marler who, funny enough, told me, he's like, yeah, man, I'm not coming on the show this week. Mental health week from me. Just taking some time. Cool. Take as long as you need. And then this happens and all hell breaks loose, and so much for that. I hope Chris Marler gets the piece he's looking for this week. But I think he made the point. I'm pretty sure it was him that made this point on social media, that if you really want to get an idea of how great Nick Saban is and how dominant he was at Alabama, look at the games he lost. Look at the teams that beat his Alabama teams. And for most, if not all of them, those games are celebrated like they're championships. Those games are still talked about to this day. Tennessee fans will forever be speaking about 52-49. South Carolina fans still talk about Steven Garcia, Alshon Jeffrey, and Marcus Lattimore and what those boys did in 2010. Georgia fans still talk about finally beating Alabama and finally getting over the hump and why that was such a big deal. Like, Ole Miss fans still relish in those victories. Texas A&M and Johnny Manziel, that was where the legend was born, man. Take away all the numbers. That alone speaks to the greatness. That's the greatest compliment you can give a program or a coach. We're worthy of, when we lose, which is very rare, we're worthy of the opponent storming the field. That's the greatest compliment you can give any program or any coach. Because you don't storm the field when you beat a nobody. You don't storm the field when you even beat a somebody. You only storm the field when you beat the very best. When you beat the very best. So I think that's a great way to truly gauge how great Nick Saban was, is, and how dominant his teams at Alabama were. Now, what's next for the Alabama Crimson Tide, guys? In just a moment, we're going to dive into the top candidates for the Bama job, my thoughts on who's available, who should be the guy to replace the GOAT. This is going to be really interesting, though, for Alabama. Greg Byrne, their athletic director, I think Bama's going to handle this well, do a great job. But, guys, you're seeing, we talked about a ripple effect for college football. How about the ripple effect for Alabama that affects college football, which is, guys, Bama players have 30 days to enter the portal. Like, it is open season on the Alabama roster. So Bama's got to move with some pace. Bama's got to move quickly, if you will, right? But it's open season, man. I mean, you're going to have, I mean, God, you got Ole Miss basically trolling Alabama by, this news comes out, and I think it was the Grove Collective, posted something like, come to the SIP with the portal thing. Like, they know, we all know, the top programs, and even probably not the top programs, they're coming calling. I saw something this morning. Somebody said that, there's third stringers at Alabama that are better than some teams' starters, which is true. We know that's true. The depth at Bama's insane. It's just 5-star, 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 4-star. I mean, just 5 stars and 4 stars just stockpiled. I mean, they've been recruiting this way for over a decade, right? So Bama's got to move, and they got to move quickly to keep things in order and keep that train, if you will, from going off the rails. But with that being said, man, today is about recognizing the greatness of Nick Saban, the greatest of all time, the greatest college football has ever seen. I can't imagine being a Bama fan today and what that must feel like, and remembering his greatness and looking back on all of the great teams. And now the question becomes, who's next in Tuscaloosa? Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, we'll talk top candidates for the Alabama job, dive into that more so, guys. Who's it going to be? Heck, with the way things are moving, with the pace they're moving, by the time this drops, unfortunately, that guy may be announced. Either way, we're going to dive into that, guys. All that and more on the other side of this break. You're tuned in to SEC Unfiltered Live.
Yo, you think Dallas' Power 4 gonna drop 30 tomorrow?
Boy, you tripping.
Did you see his mom made a post about going to the game?
What? Hold up. His mama gonna be there?
He's been averaging like 34 points a game when she's there.
At least 40 when she be on that Jumbotron.
He don't like to let his mama down.
Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Cash in on your sports fandom with Prize Picks.
SEC Unfiltered Live is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Go download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com. And when you do, use the promo code SECU to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is the simplest fantasy game on the market, focused around prop total entries. You pick 2 to 6 players, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. Prize Picks has no sharks, optimizers, or mass multi-entry. It's literally just you against the projection. They also allow mixed sport entries. So, for example, you can take the over on LeBron, parlay with the under on Mahomes. They've got college sports, pro sports, literally anything and everything you can think of. They have got it over at Prize Picks. They also have a slick, easy-to-use mobile app, both on the App Store and Google Play, and they're rated 4.8 stars in the App Store with rave reviews. So many fans and listeners of SEC Unfiltered have made tons of money with our friends at Prize Picks, and you should as well. So again, go download the Prize Picks app or head over to prizepicks.com, and when you do, use that promo code SECU to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. We're also brought to you by our friends over at MyBookie. When your money's on the line, choose a trusted sports book that gives you tools to win, like MyBookie. At MyBookie, it doesn't matter if your team is up or down. You can easily cash out or bet the game live to come out on the winning side. Use MyBookie for daily odds boosts, same-game parlays, and take advantage of huge prize pool contests. Every single sack, fumble, and touchdown is another chance to hit payday. To get started, go to mybookie.ag, and on your first deposit, use promo code SECU to grab a deposit match up to $1,000. Try the MyBookie money bag as well to grab a potential Super Bowl front runner at long shot odds, plus 38,000 on the Eagles and Chiefs. You won't find odds like that anywhere else. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. Finally, SEC Unfiltered Live is brought to you by our friends over at Roback. Guys, if you haven't heard of Roback before, it's time to check them out. It's safe to say I'd bet on these guys any day of the week because I absolutely love their gear. I couldn't be more pumped to work with Roback. It's simply some of the most comfortable gear that I own. From the performance polos to the hoodies and the joggers, it's some of the best fit and best feel around. Roback's performance hoodies are some of the best pieces of clothing I've ever worn. I can't emphasize how soft these things are with great stretch and breathability. They're simply some of the best hoodies out there. Odds are, guys, if you see me during football season, baseball season, basketball season, or just here on SEC Unfiltered Live, you'll more than likely see me in a Roback hoodie. Secondly, guys, Roback's performance polos, they're some of the most comfortable polos out there. They're moisture wicking with 4-way stretch, making them perfect for a game day, and they have the perfect fit. With crisp collars that don't lose their shape, I could not recommend these polos more. In all honesty, guys, Roback's been gaining traction big time. I'm sure you've seen them. They've been working with some of college football's biggest stars, such as Alabama's quarterback Jalen Milroe and former LSU head coach Ed Orgeron. So go check them out now and use the promo code SECU on Roback.com for a generous 20% off your first order. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. 20% off all bottoms, Q-zips, hoodies, and more with the promo code SECU. Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Thursday, January the 11th, 2024. As we begin this conversation, talking top candidates for the Alabama job, who's going to be the guy that replaces the GOAT? This is breaking news in the last 30 minutes or so. Dan Lanning, Oregon head coach, and someone that many folks thought would be the top candidate for this job at Alabama, Lanning has announced he is remaining at Oregon. Wow. So Dan Lanning is officially off the board. Wow. Okay. Folks, as we dive into this thing, like I mentioned, this is an ever-changing conversation. Appreciate you all tuning in. Continue to flood us with your questions, comments, and voicemails. Let's go ahead and dive into this. We now know that Dan Lanning will remain at Oregon. So, one of the top candidates for the Alabama job is officially off the board. Who is going to be that guy that replaces the greatest of all time? Who is going to fill in those shoes? Guys, my first question is this, and it may sound a bit crazy. Make no mistake, the Bama job, would you say it's the best in college football? I think you probably would, but it may be the toughest. The question I have is, who wants to be that guy that follows up Nick Saban? Guys, we've seen this before. When somebody follows up a legend, it feels like an impossible situation. Like it's one of those situations where it's like, you cannot do enough, right? You can't do enough. I mean, I recall when Nick Saban first got hired at Bama, or maybe it was just before, but I remember hearing about, they debated whether Nick Saban should wear houndstooth or not on the sidelines because, well, that's what the Bear did. So, I mean, we saw it at Florida with Steve Spurrier. Poor Ron Zook. I mean, poor Ron Zook was practically the sacrificial lamb in that situation. Never really had a chance. Never really had a shot. Because you get so accustomed to greatness. You get so accustomed to the dominance that a guy like Nick Saban had. What happens when a new head coach comes in and wins 9 games? If that were to happen. So, this is a special situation where there's a short list of real candidates that I think Bama probably wants. Who wants the job? Most likely everyone. I think there's a very small number of guys who don't want it. Dan Lanning has obviously come out and said, I'm staying at Oregon. And you know what? I get that because Dan Lanning's got something at Oregon that he's built that I think is really special. They're going to be a 12-team college football playoff team, guys. And guys, Dan Lanning doesn't deal with nearly the amount of pressure. It is nowhere near the pressure cooker that Alabama is. I mean, they've got expectations at Oregon. Don't get me wrong, but not like at Bama. Not like at Alabama, where if the next head coach goes 2 or 3 years without winning a national title, he's going to be on the hot seat. I think we'd all agree with that. He's going to be on the hot seat. There's no question. So, let's now remove Dan Lanning's name because, of course, as we dive into top candidates, and he was one of my top guys. He was number one for me. And, guys, I'll tell you what I've heard from folks that, I got a couple buddies that are in the industry, work for 24/7 Sports, CBS Sports, what have you. Either way, from what I have heard, and you've heard Josh Pate already say this and others, I don't think this is going to be a coaching search that gets dragged out very long, if long at all. I think you're going to see Alabama, they're going to work diligently, but they're going to move swiftly. They're going to move swiftly, right? I think they understand as well. Like, the short list for candidates, realistic guys who could handle the Bama job, who are going to come in, pick up where it left off, it's not a list of probably 10 names. It's probably 3 or 4 names, right? But I think they're going to move swiftly. From what I was told last night, Dan Lanning was going to be option 1. If he said no, brace yourselves. If he said no, Dabo Swinney was going to be option number 2. And if Dabo said no, Lane Kiffin was going to be option number 3. Now, does it get to that point? We'll see. Well, Dan Lanning said no. Is it going to be Dabo Swinney, guys? I talked about this when the Texas A&M job opened, and that I mentioned this, and there was some pushback, but I said, hey, listen, if I'm A&M, I give Dabo a call. There aren't many coaches in this sport that are active national champions that have won titles. The biggest knock against Dabo, and it's very fair, is the fact that for whatever reason, he just refuses to use the transfer portal. I mean, Clemson right now, guys, top 15 class, 0 portal commitments. They offered some portal guys, but 0 portal commitments? Is Alabama willing to embrace a guy like Dabo that obviously, guys, doesn't like NIL all that much? I don't know that he's a big fan of the portal. He doesn't show it. Are they willing to deal with that? Does Dabo change in his ways? Is it a situation where Bama says, you know what? Dabo Swinney's the best of the best. We'll handle a portal NIL stuff. We got it. The collective guys, we got it. We got the bag. We got the money. Guys, if I am Alabama, I'm throwing everything I got at Lane Kiffin. I'm throwing everything I've got at Lane. You could argue there's not a better coach in college football for this current climate of college football than Lane Kiffin. The portal king himself. The portal king himself. And guys, we already knew Lane Kiffin was a really good coach. What he was doing at Ole Miss. Then Ole Miss, then he started to get some resources. Then the Grove Collective, they started to put their money where their mouth was. And Ole Miss has turned into a beast. Alabama, they can write whatever check they want to write. It does not matter. Money is not real in college football, especially at Alabama. I am throwing everything I have at Lane Kiffin. And you may say to yourself, no way he leaves. This is the same guy that dipped out on Tennessee and went to Southern Cal. And I know the situation was different, but guys, I'm just saying, I think Lane Kiffin's a guy that, you know what? I don't think there's a moral compass necessarily stopping him. I'm not questioning Lane's morality. I like Lane Kiffin. There's not a fan base out there, maybe outside of like Georgia with Kirby, and maybe there's a couple others. There's not a fan base out there that should turn their nose up at Lane Kiffin. If Lane Kiffin wanted to come to your school, you'd take him in a heartbeat. And if you don't, you're an idiot. There's no other way to put it. But Lane Kiffin in this climate of college football, there's nobody better. I mean, there's literally nobody better for what college football is now. I'm throwing everything I got at him. Other guys, Steve Sarkisian, I think at Texas. That one makes a lot of sense. Bama's a place that, his career came alive there in Tuscaloosa, right? Done great things with Texas. He doesn't necessarily have any tie to Texas that's holding him there. So I think he could be an interesting candidate. I think that would be a great hire. What about Mike Norvell at Florida State? Is that one? I mean, I think Mike Norvell at Florida State could be interesting. How about Kalen DeBoer at Washington? What he's done with the Huskies. Would they go that route? Would they go Sharon Moore over at Michigan? I don't think they would. For those saying Deion Sanders, no freaking way. There's no freaking way. There's no way. There's no way at all. And it's not because Deion may not turn out to be a really great coach, but that's the thing. We don't know yet. And I just, guys, I cannot help but wonder, how would Deion's personality and his method of doing things, how would that be received by the old heads in Tuscaloosa? You know what I mean? Like, how would he be received? So I don't think Deion's a realistic candidate. I don't think he's got enough of a body of work. Guys, he's had 1 year coaching at Colorado. It's a fun name. It's a fun name for sure. I don't think it's a realistic option. God, do they try to get Urban Meyer out of retirement? That's always a name that comes up when stuff like this happens. For good reason, though. He's one of the legends. I mean, he's not the most squeaky clean guy, but guys, it's all about winning. That's it. Who cares? It's about winning. I don't think Kirby Smart's an option, guys. He's not leaving Georgia. That guy's a Georgia alum. He loves Georgia. He's a dog in every sense of the word. Kirby Smart ain't leaving Georgia. Who am I missing? Is there somebody else? I mean, those are the ones to me that are very obvious. I'll be surprised if my source was correct, which I have no reason to doubt them. Dan Lanning says no, go to Dabo. Dabo says no, go to Kiffin. I'll be shocked if they get past that third option. Now, for those scoffing at the Dabo hire, there seems to be a lot of Bama fans that are opposed to the Dabo Swinney hire. Now, I get it. Dabo is a polar opposite of what Saban is. Saban, hard ass, get after it, in your face, that type of style. Dabo is just not that. Dabo's a different type of dude. He's a different animal, right? But he is one of the best coaches in college football. He is. He's one of the guys at the top of the sport. He's an Alabama alum, cut his teeth at Bama. Like, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. But guys, like I said, if I am Alabama, I'm throwing everything I have at Lane Kiffin. And I know Greg McElroy, guys, and on that note, Greg McElroy on their station, Jocks 94.5 in Birmingham, Alabama, said this, quote, Kiffin ain't an option. He's out, end quote. Is it Dabo? Guys, is it Dabo? And again, it's kind of scary how much it makes sense, guys. It's kind of scary how much it makes sense. You look at Dabo Swinney this year. You had the Tyler from Spartanburg thing. You could tell he was a little ticked off with his fan base. You could tell. It was one of those things where does Dabo Swinney love Clemson? Because a lot of folks have predicted he'll be a Clemson lifer. Does Dabo Swinney love Clemson? Yes. But you can even outgrow something you love. You can evolve and outgrow something that you have a passion for, or, feel like I need to go to the next phase, next chapter, right? I can speak from personal experience, but you can outgrow things. The way Dabo spoke this year, the way he talked about the fan base and to the fan base, talking about the bottom, what did he say, 2.9% or bottom 3% or bottom 5% of the fan base, and that they were, really being critical of the fan base. Now, I don't know what he would expect going to Tuscaloosa, like they're going to be, oh, we're fine. We don't have crazy. We're just grateful for just a win in a game. Like, the expectations are only higher there. But, and then you got the conspiracy theories that say maybe Dabo knew he was on the way out, knew the Bama job would open, and said, I don't need to worry about the portal. I'm fine. I'm not going to sweat it. It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. But if it were me, personally, I'm going after Lane Kiffin. But we do know this now. No Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning is out of the search. He is confirmed. He is staying at Oregon. So, who is going to be the guy that replaces the GOAT? Who can fill those shoes of Nick Saban? It's going to be fascinating to see, guys, as this is an ever-evolving situation, an ever-evolving coaching search. Heck, by the time this drops on YouTube later today, we very well may have an answer. Who knows? But one thing's for certain. The pressure is on whoever takes over. Is it Dabo? Is it Kiffin? Is it Sark? Is it somebody else? We shall see. Guys, we're going to jump into another quick break. On the other side, we will talk a little bit of SEC basketball. There was some action on the Hardwood last night. Some really interesting results. Upsets abound. And I think really, guys, it speaks to what's going to happen all year long with the depth and the quality of this league. Guys, all that and more on the other side of this break. You're tuned in to SEC Unfiltered Live.
Yo, you think Dallas' Power 4 gonna drop 30 tomorrow?
Boy, you tripping.
Did you see his mom made a post about going to the game?
What? Hold up. His mama gonna be there?
He's been averaging like 34 points a game when she's there.
At least 40 when she be on that Jumbotron.
He don't like to let his mama down.
Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Cash in on your sports fandom with Prize Picks.
SEC Unfiltered Live is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Go download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com. And when you do, use the promo code SECU to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is the simplest fantasy game on the market, focused around prop total entries. You pick 2 to 6 players, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. Prize Picks has no sharks, optimizers, or mass multi-entry. It's literally just you against the projection. They also allow mixed sport entries. So, for example, you can take the over on LeBron, parlay with the under on Mahomes. They've got college sports, pro sports, literally anything and everything you can think of. They have got it over at Prize Picks. They also have a slick, easy-to-use mobile app, both on the App Store and Google Play, and they're rated 4.8 stars in the App Store with rave reviews. So many fans and listeners of SEC Unfiltered have made tons of money with our friends at Prize Picks, and you should as well. So again, go download the Prize Picks app or head over to prizepicks.com, and when you do, use that promo code SECU to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. We're also brought to you by our friends over at MyBookie. When your money's on the line, choose a trusted sports book that gives you tools to win, like MyBookie. At MyBookie, it doesn't matter if your team is up or down. You can easily cash out or bet the game live to come out on the winning side. Use MyBookie for daily odds boosts, same-game parlays, and take advantage of huge prize pool contests. Every single sack, fumble, and touchdown is another chance to hit payday. To get started, go to mybookie.ag, and on your first deposit, use promo code SECU to grab a deposit match up to $1,000. Try the MyBookie money bag as well to grab a potential Super Bowl frontrunner at long shot odds, plus 38,000 on the Eagles and Chiefs. You won't find odds like that anywhere else. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. Finally, SEC Unfiltered Live is brought to you by our friends over at Roback. Guys, if you haven't heard of Roback before, it's time to check them out. It's safe to say I'd bet on these guys any day of the week because I absolutely love their gear. I couldn't be more pumped to work with Roback. It's simply some of the most comfortable gear that I own. From the performance polos to the hoodies and the joggers, it's some of the best fit and best feel around. Roback's performance hoodies are some of the best pieces of clothing I've ever worn. I can't emphasize how soft these things are with great stretch and breathability. They're simply some of the best hoodies out there. Odds are, guys, if you see me during football season, baseball season, basketball season, or just here on SEC Unfiltered Live, you'll more than likely see me in a Roback hoodie. Secondly, guys, Roback's performance polos, they're some of the most comfortable polos out there. They're moisture wicking with 4-way stretch, making them perfect for a game day, and they have the perfect fit. With crisp collars that don't lose their shape, I could not recommend these polos more. In all honesty, guys, Roback's been gaining traction big time. I'm sure you've seen them. They've been working with some of college football's biggest stars, such as Alabama's quarterback Jalen Milroe and former LSU head coach Ed Orgeron. So go check them out now and use the promo code SECU on Roback.com for a generous 20% off your first order. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. 20% off all bottoms, Q-zips, hoodies, and more with the promo code SECU. Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Thursday, January the 11th, 2024. What a last 24 hours or so. The live show is popping today. A lot of new folks in here, guys. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you can, hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that bell icon as well so you get notifications of when we go live and when we drop new video content. We do this every single day, noon to 2 p.m. Eastern. Also, guys, end of show and throughout the show, we take your questions, your comments, and your voicemails at 843-790-3377. Guys, big news just dropping in the SEC. I say the SEC. They're not quite in the SEC yet, but this will impact their first year in the SEC as Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers officially makes it official. He is back for the 2024 season, guys. So we'll probably talk about this more in depth tomorrow, what it means for Texas. Obviously, though, a huge boost for the Longhorns as they prepare for life in the Southeastern Conference. So really exciting stuff, guys. Again, this just reinforces, we already knew this, college football has no offseason. I mean, none. Absolutely none. And that's why we love it so much, man. That's why we love it so much. So anyways, guys, we'll keep the show rolling, keep the conversation rolling. Like I mentioned, guys, thank you all so much to the new subscribers, the new listeners, new folks tuning in. Guys, I was looking at our analytics before the show, and I think we've had almost 200,000 views over the last 28 days on YouTube. And I think 80% of the folks who have consumed our content over the last month have been new viewers. That is incredible. Thousands upon thousands of people. So do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. And again, you can do it with us live every single day, guys. We do this every day, Monday through Friday, noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I appreciate each and every single one of you. And if you're new, guys, let us know. Drop a comment in the comments. Would love to shout you out if this is your first time or you just stumbled upon us a couple days ago, weeks ago, what have you. Would love to hear from you. Guys, anyways, we keep the conversation rolling, guys. We go from football to basketball. A big night of upsets on the hardwood in the SEC, guys. Some really, really interesting results last night as some of the top teams in the SEC go down. And we start most notably, and this has been a huge week of upsets, by the way, in the SEC or just college basketball in general. We've seen Purdue go down. We've seen Houston go down. We've seen Kansas go down. And now the Tennessee Volunteers, who fall to Mississippi State by a final score of 77-72. What a win for Chris Jan's squad. You know, guys, looking at the slate last night, you had a pair of home underdogs. And I really felt like, I was like, you know what? We're not getting chalk tonight. Like we're going to see some upsets. Pick the Ole Miss game, which we're going to get into in a second. I thought Tennessee was a good pick in this ballgame. I thought Tennessee would go into Starkville, right? You knew Mississippi State coming off the loss to South Carolina. You know, they were somewhat desperate, what have you. You don't want to fall to 0-2 in SEC play. But Tennessee coming off that huge blowout win against the Ole Miss Rebels. You're thinking to yourself, okay, they're a machine, right? Nobody's going to stop Tennessee. Guys, I think what last night, and even just this Mississippi State-Tennessee game, it goes to show this is a microcosm for the craziness and the madness we're going to get in SEC play this year. Because with NIL, with the portal, with the parity increasing, guys, there's not an easy night in the SEC anymore. Like there's really, truly not. When you got a team like Mississippi State, who I think we probably all consider middle of the pack, guys. I don't think we consider Mississippi State an elite team at all. But Chris Jan's team, hey, you have to go on the road. Tolu Smith gets hot. A couple guys get hot. All of a sudden, look at you. You're down late in the game. State did their best to lose that game late, too. But you got a guy like Hubbard who scores 25 points. You got a guy like Tolu Smith who scores 23 points. All it takes is one or two guys going off, and all of a sudden you pull a big upset. That's exactly what Mississippi State did. Shot 50% from the floor, 33% from three. You look at Tennessee, they held in a 46% from the floor, 28% from three. Couple guys with some big performances, too. Necht had 28 points, Ziegler 26. Adu with just 9 points, though. A huge win. I mean, a huge win for Chris Jan's team, bouncing back from that South Carolina loss and getting this victory over a top 5 team. But again, guys, I think this really just screams to it's going to be madness. Like, even the best teams in the SEC, even the teams at the very top, they're going to take their licks, man. I mean, you maybe look at a Vandy as like that's kind of the kick-in win for most teams. But, dude, LSU can beat you on any given night. Mississippi State can beat you on any given night. South Carolina can beat you on any given night. You keep going down the list. There's not an easy out in this conference. And we saw that last night with Mississippi State getting this huge win over the Tennessee Volunteers. And this is really, guys, the first time I think we've seen Tennessee look vulnerable, right? Because their 3 losses prior to this were to Purdue, Kansas, and North Carolina. Like, they were really impressive losses. Call it for what it is. And they had crushed everyone else. And so for State to get this dub, man, just a huge, huge victory for Chris Jan's team. And now Tennessee left picking up the pieces. And Rick Barnes and company got to get it shored up quickly. They go on the, I believe they go on the road. Maybe they host Georgia. They've got Georgia this weekend. Tennessee's back on the road yet again. Take on Georgia, ESPN2 game at noon. We'll talk more about that, guys, tomorrow. But a big game for sure. And another tough spot, man. Georgia's been a team. Can beat anybody on any given night. Life is tough in the SEC this year. Speaking of Georgia, guys, they take down Arkansas last night. Final score of 76-66. Guys, I think it's time to pronounce Arkansas hoops dead for this season. I think Arkansas is in real trouble, man. Like, normally we've seen these slow starts under Eric Musselman where, like, November, December, and you'll hear our good friend Jeff Goodman later in the show talk about this. But we've seen Arkansas start slow before, right? Like, this isn't something that's new to us. They tend to get off to some slower start. They pick it up, though, as they go. I don't know they're going to pick it up this year, man, because, I mean, not only do you lose to Georgia, you lose by double digits to Georgia. And you're 0-2 in SEC play. Double-digit loss to Georgia, blowout loss, worst loss in the history of Bud Walton Arena to the Auburn Tigers last Saturday. I mean, I just don't know where the answers come from, guys. I really don't. Arkansas is talented. Make no mistake, they're talented, but they're lost. I mean, they are just totally lost right now, right? And give credit to Georgia, right? Georgia was a favorite in this game. They were expected to win. And I think they're doing a great job this year. I mean, that coaching staff has been fantastic. That team has been great. Hill with 19 points, Thomason with 15 points. It's really impressive to see. I mean, I recall Georgia a couple of years ago just being abysmal, right? A 1 or 2 win team in SEC play. Georgia's another one, man. Middle of the pack, right? Middle of the pack that any given night they can beat anybody. But again, I think the bigger takeaway, man, just Arkansas. Like, what is Arkansas? Like, what's going on in Fayetteville? What's going on in Fayetteville? And it's absolutely crazy to see. Finally, guys, how about the Ole Miss Rebels, man? The response from Ole Miss after you get blown out by Tennessee. You're labeled as a fraud. You're no good. See, Ole Miss played nobody. They're this, they're that, whatever. All they do is come back home, guys, and score $100. Score $100 against the Florida Gators. 103-85. I mean, shot the lights out, guys. Ole Miss shot 59% in this game, guys. 40% from three. Brakefield with 28. Merle with 23. Flanagan with 17. Murray with 12. And the friendly confines. I mean, it helps to come home for sure. But I was not buying the fact that, Ole Miss is a fraud. They're no good. They're this, they're that, whatever. Great job by Chris Beard and company. Again, get that team off the mat. Say, hey, you know what? Took an L. It is what it is. Still believe in ourselves. We're still the team that we think we are. And they showed that. And for Florida, I know Florida fans are down and out. You're 0-2 now in SEC play. You lost that game in Kentucky. I think Florida, again, from the defensive side, you got to be somewhat worried, right? You give up 60% shooting. I mean, my goodness, what's going on the defensive side of the floor? I'm not hitting the panic button any sort of way on Florida yet, but you got to get off the schneid quickly. You cannot afford to fall 0-3 in SEC play. But Ole Miss, man, as the home underdog, they win this game by 18 points. 18 points. So this year in the SEC is going to be fun, man. This year in the SEC is going to be crazy. Nobody is safe. Anybody can beat anybody. And we saw that last night on the Hardwood. Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, electric conversation with our good friend, a legend in his own right, Jeff Goodman, owner, operator of the Field of 68, ESPN, Fox, Stadium, The Messenger. I mean, this dude's been everywhere. If you love college basketball, you know who he is. That full conversation comes up next here on the show. All that and more. You're tuned in to SEC Unfiltered Live.
Yo, you think Dallas's Power 4 gonna drop 30 tomorrow?
Boy, you tripping.
Did you see his mom made a post about going to the game?
What? Hold up. His mama gonna be there?
He's been averaging like 34 points a game when she's there.
At least 40 when she be on that Jumbotron.
He don't like to let his mama down.
Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Cash in on your sports fandom with Prize Picks.
SEC Unfiltered Live is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Go download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com. And when you do, use the promo code SECU to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is the simplest fantasy game on the market, focused around prop total entries. You pick 2 to 6 players, and you can win up to 10 times on an entry. Prize Picks has no sharks, optimizers, or mass multi-entry. It's literally just you against the projection. They also allow mixed sport entries. So, for example, you can take the over on LeBron, parlay with the under on Mahomes. They've got college sports, pro sports, literally anything and everything you can think of. They have got it over at Prize Picks. They also have a slick, easy-to-use mobile app. both in the App Store and Google Play, and they're rated 4.8 stars in the App Store with rave reviews. So many fans and listeners of SEC Unfiltered have made tons of money with our friends at Prize Picks, and you should as well. So again, go download the Prize Picks app or head over to prizepicks.com, and when you do, use that promo code SECU to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. We're also brought to you by our friends over at MyBookie. When your money's on the line, choose a trusted sports book that gives you tools to win, like MyBookie. At MyBookie, it doesn't matter if your team is up or down. You can easily cash out or bet the game live to come out on the winning side. Use MyBookie for daily odds boosts, same-game parlays, and take advantage of huge prize pool contests. Every single sack, fumble, and touchdown is another chance to hit payday. To get started, go to mybookie.ag, and on your first deposit, use promo code SECU to grab a deposit match up to $1,000. Try the MyBookie money bag as well to grab a potential Super Bowl frontrunner at long shot odds, plus 38,000 on the Eagles and Chiefs. You won't find odds like that anywhere else. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. Finally, SEC Unfiltered Live is brought to you by our friends over at Roback. Guys, if you haven't heard of Roback before, it's time to check them out. It's safe to say I'd bet on these guys any day of the week because I absolutely love their gear. I couldn't be more pumped to work with Roback. It's simply some of the most comfortable gear that I own. From the performance polos to the hoodies and the joggers, it's some of the best fit and best feel around. Roback's performance hoodies are some of the best pieces of clothing I've ever worn. I can't emphasize how soft these things are with great stretch and breathability. They're simply some of the best hoodies out there. Odds are, guys, if you see me during football season, baseball season, basketball season, or just here on SEC Unfiltered Live, you'll more than likely see me in a Roback hoodie. Secondly, guys, Roback's performance polos, they're some of the most comfortable polos out there. They're moisture wicking with four-way stretch, making them perfect for a game day, and they have the perfect fit. With crisp collars that don't lose their shape, I could not recommend these polos more. In all honesty, guys, Roback's been gaining traction big time. I'm sure you've seen them. They've been working with some of college football's biggest stars, such as Alabama's quarterback Jalen Milroe and former LSU head coach Ed Orgeron. So go check them out now and use the promo code SECU on Roback.com for a generous 20% off your first order. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. 20% off all bottoms, Q-zips, hoodies, and more with the promo code SECU. Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Thursday, January the 11th, 2024. Guys, continue to leave us your questions, your comments, your voicemails. We will get into those at the end of the show. I see them rolling in, guys. I know there's a lot that you want to discuss, give your opinions on, and I want to hear you and you guys be a part of this show. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell icon so you get notifications of when we go live and when we drop new video content as well. That being said, guys, we're going to keep this thing rolling. Our good friend Jeff Goodman of the Field of 68, the Messenger, formerly of ESPN, of Fox. He's been everywhere. He's a national college basketball analyst, and he took the time to chat with me all things SEC basketball and the national landscape as well. So, guys, sit back, relax, enjoy this conversation with the legend himself, Jeff Goodman. As college basketball season is in full swing, we bring on one of the best in the business when it comes to talking college basketball. He's had stints with Fox Sports, CBS Sports, ESPN, Stadium, The Messenger, you name it. This man is all over the place. Also, the owner, the operator, the founder, what have you, of the Field of 68. You've probably seen them on social media talking all things college basketball, especially the late night for us late night owls, if you will, getting our college basketball fix. We bring in our good friend, Jeff Goodman. Again, one of the best in the business. You've definitely seen him if you're a college basketball fan. Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time. It's truly an honor to speak with you, man. What's going on?
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. And listen, SEC hoops is fun. I know football's king, but man, SEC hoops, and we got to give the late Mike Slav a lot of credit because he ramped it up years ago. And honestly, it's really fun because there's a lot of really good coaches in the league. The depth of the league is really good. I remember, again, when it was, Kentucky and Florida. And I remember Slav telling Billy Donovan, listen, you got to ramp up your non-conference schedule. You got to be kind of the cornerstone program along with Kentucky. And now you've got so many of them right now that are nationally relevant every year.
Jeff, let's start there because I think that's really intriguing. Like you mentioned, you look back, say, just a decade ago. I mean, the SEC looked completely different on the hardwood. What do you think changed the most? I mean, I think that you can point to, and the low-hanging fruit is the coaching. I mean, it feels like there's elite coaches at so many stops, but how cool and interesting has it been for you to see the evolution of this league? Because again, at one point, I don't know that basketball was, I don't want to say taken as seriously, but it's on a different level now, right? I mean, the league is so deep. We're talking about 8, 9, maybe 10 teams making the SEC or the NCAA tournament. Now you're adding Texas and Oklahoma. So the league is as deep as any now in the national landscape.
Yeah, like you said, it's coaches. It's coaches. And the perfect example is a place like Auburn. Right. I mean, they rolled the dice on Bruce Pearl and it's completely worked. I mean, he's been there for 10 years and taken them to 4 tournaments. They're on the doorstep right now of being a top 10 team nationally. And, look at the coaches before him. Jeff Lebo was terrible. Tony Barbee was terrible. But you go out and get a guy that fits Auburn, right? Rallies the fan base and he wins at the same time. And Nate Oates, Greg Byrne, listen, when he hired Nate Oates, I was like, what the hell is he doing? Why is he getting this dude that is a Midwest guy? He's from Michigan. He's coached at Buffalo. Why would you do this? But again, Nate Oates, a different style, plays up and down, got a big-time personality, will go out there and sell, will fight, all of it. And again, I'm even going back to, listen, it didn't work great, but like they hired, Mississippi State goes and hires Ben Howland. He was a big name at that time. He had gone to 3 straight Final Fours with UCLA. So it's just been different. It's been different. And, to me, again, you look up and down the roster of coaches. Rick Barnes, what he's done at Tennessee has been incredible. And now it's all about NIL. And most of the teams, let's face it, in the SEC, they've got NIL because of football.
And you look at the league, and we're talking about the depth of the league, Jeff, and I think that's really been evident this season as we dive into it. That's where I want to start, not necessarily the top. We know Kentucky's going to be there. Tennessee is going to be there. You mentioned Auburn with Bruce Pearl, but the bottom of the league has been so good this year. I mean, teams like South Carolina, like Ole Miss that were picked to be cellar dwellers. I mean, I know South Carolina took a lick last night in Tuscaloosa, but I mean, who would have had those teams at 13-2 right now? Your thoughts on the jobs that both Lamont Paris at South Carolina and then Chris Beard at Ole Miss is doing in year one? That was another, like you mentioned, roll the dice higher. We know what Beard can do on the floor. Obviously, it's the off-the-court stuff you worry about. But, I mean, if folks know college basketball, watch his career, I guess we shouldn't be surprised at the success he's having so early on.
Zero, because he's done it everywhere he's been. He did it at Little Rock, got him to the tournament in his first year, beat Purdue. Then obviously what he did at Texas Tech was remarkable, taking them to within a basket of winning the whole thing. Then at Texas, before he was fired, I mean, you look at what he built there quickly in a year plus and setting that program up to succeed last year. Lamont Paris, a little bit more surprising. I remember being with those guys. Took my daughter on a trip down the Bahamas, and it happened to be at the time when there were a bunch of teams playing these foreign tours. In South Carolina, I was down there, and we caught a little bit of them. We were going down the water slides and hanging out at the blackjack table a whole lot more than we were watching basketball in the Bahamas in the off season. But again, I wasn't sure what to think of Lamont Paris in year 2. He brought in some pretty good transfers. But Michi Johnson's been really good this year. BJ Mack's been a great addition from Wofford. He's done a nice job. Like, he's got the program headed in the right direction. I wasn't sure they were going to be able to do that in a loaded SEC this year. And obviously in the second half last night, they struggled a little bit. But if you had told Lamont that they'd have 2 losses at this point in the year and really fought Clemson tooth and nail in that one in their first setback, he would have signed up in a heartbeat.
Back to the top of the league, Jeff, we go. Let's talk the Kentucky Wildcats. Coming in, we knew this was a huge year for John Calipari and that program, and that fan base is hungry to get back to the pinnacle. They haven't been in quite a while. Just talk about their team. Do you feel like they've got the group to make a Final Four appearance or maybe, win it all yet again?
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, and Cal has really struggled in the tournament lately, right? I mean, the COVID year was really tough for them. Then they lose, St. Peter's. They haven't been out of the first weekend, and I think it's been 4 years now. So these Kentucky fans are hungry because they're not used to that, especially with John Calipari at the helm, because he's going to bring in top-tier talent every single year. Well, he did it this year, but I was skeptical. Especially in the summer, because they didn't have Trey Mitchell at that point. Trey Mitchell was at West Virginia, and so was Bob Huggins. Huggins gets fired for basically intoxication issues, and Trey Mitchell transfers, and he's been a huge addition for Kentucky. Also, Antonio Reeves, maybe he was their best returning scorer at that point. He was taking classes at Illinois State. He was taking classes. He was ready to leave, but he couldn't. The rule stipulated that he wasn't able to go back to his original school, take classes, be eligible somewhere else. So he came back. Then you add in this freshman class that talented, but you just didn't know. I didn't know how they'd be together, especially Rob Dillingham and DJ Wagner. But their guards, Reed Shepherd's been awesome. Dillingham's been much more efficient than I thought he'd be. Aaron Bradshaw's coming along, and he might be the most talented of all of them. We haven't even really talked about Justin Edwards. He's a really good player too. So their ceiling is so high, and they've been so much more mature in how they play the game than I thought they would, because you look at freshmen these days, they get eaten up for the most part, unless they're the elite of the elite, because they're playing against 23, 24, 25-year-olds because of the extra COVID year. And this Kentucky team, they've had a few stumbles, but for the most part, really, really come out of the gates much better than expected.
Jeff, Eric Musselman was visibly frustrated after that blowout loss Saturday at home against Auburn. They got a big one tonight as we speak against the Georgia Bulldogs, a game in which they're an underdog in, which I wouldn't have believed that if you told me that a couple weeks ago. How disappointed have you been with the Hogs? Because that was a team I think we were talking about as one of the top teams in the SEC, could compete to win the crown. And, I mean, they just look lost. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, and usually they do early. In November and December, they struggle because Muss has all these transfers, and he's done it since his Nevada days. But at Arkansas, they've struggled, and then they just figure it out. Well, this year, I'm not sure they're going to figure it out, although they do have the talent. Like, it wouldn't shock me if they flipped it and turned it on and won 5 or 6 straight. It's getting a little bit late in the game right now. You got to be able to do it soon, because they've dug themselves a pretty good hole. But I mean, they got talent. Like, Tremont Mark is one of the best players in the league, the transfer from Houston. Brazil is one of the most talented players in the country. And now they just got the kid Menafield back, so they have a point guard. But, man, that loss at home, the worst loss in the history of Bud Walton Arena to Auburn, was absolutely shocking, because I thought they would come back. Honestly, I thought they'd win that game. I really did. I thought they'd win that game at home. They have such a good home court advantage, and they needed that one desperately. So that has me thinking, like, this thing could get – if it doesn't flip quickly, it could be an ugly ending to this season for Arkansas.
And to be fair, Jeff, you weren't the only one. I also took Arkansas in that game, same line of thinking, and I think a lot of us had egg on our face. To the Tennessee Volunteers, Jeff, this is a fun team to talk about, man. I mean, that non-conference schedule, it's crazy when you go look at it, because if you're in the football grind like a lot of us, and you look at the overall record, man, Tennessee's got 3 losses. What's going on? They lost to Purdue, Kansas, and North Carolina, and
no change.
Purdue 1 and 2 right at that time. Thoughts on the Tennessee Volunteers? Because as much as we love to talk about Kentucky, I think Tennessee makes a real argument for who the best team in the SEC is. You know that Rick Barnes coach team, they're going to play with physicality. They're a lot of fun to watch. Your thoughts on what Tennessee is and maybe their ceiling in regards to the tournament?
Yeah, they're older. I mean, that's the advantage they have over Kentucky, right? They're older and they guard a high level. And they added Dalton Connect, the transfer from Northern Colorado, who started his career in the junior college ranks. And they needed scoring desperately. And Connect is one of the better scorers, and a little bit of a surprise that he's been able to make the transition from the low major ranks as well as he has. But he's a really good athlete. He can shoot it pretty well. He can get by dudes. He's got good size. And now you're getting a healthy Zakai Ziegler. You know, you got to remember, like, he was still coming off that injury, and it's taken time for him. But you know, Josiah James, he's older, and they added Gainey too, Justin's kid, Jordan, who can shoot the ball a little bit. Santiago's older. Like, they just got a good mix for the most part. My biggest question still is going to be the scoring ruts. You know, in the NCAA tournament, Barnes just hasn't had a ton of success overall. Can this new look kind of with adding Connect, is that enough? Him and Gainey, that enough to get him over the hump? Because they just seemingly always have these scoring droughts that you're just like, man. And again, those losses you talked about, they don't have a ton of like huge wins under their belt. I mean, you look at, they blew out Ole Miss. They beat Illinois. That was a good win with Terrence Shannon Jr. But it's not like they have a ton of good wins. What's really helped their numbers, like you said, if you play a lot of big boys, your numbers are going to be pretty good. Or you beat up like a team like Iowa State. Now they just ended up getting a big win over Houston last night. But before that, they're like in the top 10 in all the metrics, and they really didn't have a good win. Like they hadn't beaten anybody, but you know what they had done? They had beaten crappy teams by like 100 points and run it up. And if you do that, your metrics are going to look pretty good. And that's kind of now, unfortunately, a blueprint for some of these teams, not necessarily Iowa State, to move up in these, you know, the net rankings and some of these other metrics.
Jeff, when you look at the SEC as a whole, right, it's been full of surprises one way or another, good or bad. What has surprised you the most? Maybe a team that's overachieved. I mean, again, we talked about what Ole Miss and South Carolina have done. I think Georgia's a team you look at too, though, at 11-3. They got a big one tonight, like we mentioned. LSU matched their win total in the SEC last night at 2, right, Jeff? 2. I mean, that just so it goes to show you how difficult that's been for Matt McMahon. And then maybe on the negative, I mean, again, I feel like I'm surprised at Texas A&M. They really haven't gotten it rolling under Buzz Williams. Granted, who knows? They might rattle off 15 in a row like they did last year. Missouri at 0-2. Obviously, Arkansas we've talked about. What surprised you in the SEC, both good and bad to this point?
If I had to say the biggest surprise is probably Auburn for me from a high note. Like I didn't see this coming. But again, I should have with Bruce. But every time before the year I talk to Bruce, and I think Bruce just sells low every year to me. At least to me, I know he does. He sells low and he's smart. He's done this long enough to know. Don't sell high and deliver low. To me, you sell low and overachieve, right? That's the best way to do it. So I think Auburn would be, if I had to say like my biggest surprises on the positive end, Auburn, Kentucky, South Carolina. Those would be my 3 biggest surprises on the positive side. On the negative side, Arkansas won, Texas A&M certainly would, you know, to me, again, you got one of the best guards in the country in Wade Taylor. People, like you said, picked him second in the preseason. A lot of respect there for Buzz Williams. And then Missouri a little bit, just because, you know, like Dennis did such a good job, Dennis Gates last year in year 1. I was still shocked. And these ADs baffle me a little bit. When you give somebody like that after 1 year, such a lucrative contract with all that guaranteed money after 1 season, like it just baffles me. Like, where else are they going? Like, where else is Dennis Gates going to go? You bid against yourself. And it's like, now again, the buyout is usually what matters, but you guaranteed him all of that money. And year 2 now has been pretty bad so far. So I just, again, some of the ADs just absolutely confuse me because I don't think they have any clue about business and like how this business works. And again, you don't bid against yourself. Like whoever gave John Calipari this contract, now is Mitch Barnhart, years ago. I get it. Cal was rolling and everything, but look at what it's done. Again, if Cal gets knocked out, let's say Kentucky loses in the first round, which I don't think they're going to. But let's say they lose in the first round this year again. Those fans will be wanting him gone in the worst way. They don't care what you do in the regular season. They just want to get to a Final Four and win a national title. They don't want to lose in the first weekend again. So, like, whatever Kentucky's doing right now, to be honest, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. What matters is, are they going to get to the Sweet 16 and beyond? And if they lose in the first round, he's owed $33 million. Still, $33 million. This is a contract that was signed, 6 years ago? Something like that. It baffles me. And I'm sure it's the same thing in football. I mean, look at Jimbo Fisher, right? All the money that they ate for Jimbo Fisher. The dumbest thing ever. You bid against yourself. Or else you say, like, listen, Dennis Gates, you want to go somewhere else? Go.
So, Jeff, you look at the SEC, the top. I think we all agree Tennessee, Kentucky, Auburn would be my top three right now. I think they're in a kind of a class of their own. Who would you say is that fourth best team? Is it Alabama? And if it's not them, who would it be?
It probably is, but it's not like Alabama's got some great resume either. I like Nate. Mark Sears has been awesome this year. Aaron Estrada was good last night, and he needs to pick up. But they've got a lot of, mid-major transfers. Those are their best players. They don't have a Brandon Miller. Sears is a mid-major kid who transferred up. Estrada, Hofstra, Grant Nelson, North Dakota State. Like, these are all mid-major guys. They don't have that high-end dude, and they miss a big. They miss a shot Bediako. That's who they miss more than anything else. But I think fourth is a little wide open. I really do. I mean, again, I think can Texas A&M get it going? Mississippi State, Chris Jans, they're in the mix. Georgia, I think the bottom is the bottom. Vandy stinks. Missouri's not going to be very good this year. Other than that, I mean, LSU, again, look at the win they had over A&M. Maybe, I mean, I don't think they're great, but they're dangerous. And even Vandy's dangerous because as bad as Stackhouse has done, and it's mostly recruiting and retention, he can coach. Like, if you give him talent, if he could retain guys, Vandy could be really good. He can't keep them.
So, Jeff, switching gears to the national perspective, and I want to ask you about this because I think it's really intriguing before we dive into the specifics of these teams. Last year was a really fun year from the standpoint of we had so many random teams in the Elite Eight, the Final Four. It wasn't just blue blood, right? FAU, the run they made, some others as well. I look at the rankings right now. Purdue, Kansas, UConn, Kentucky, North Carolina. Do you think we're going back to that where it's, because the reason everybody loves March Madness is for bracketology and upsets and we started to see 16-1 upsets, which we never saw, 15-2s that would happen. But a lot of times it felt like year after year, we got to a point where okay, Kansas is there. North Carolina is there. Kentucky's there. Like, the blue blood shine. The teams, shocker, with the most talent win. Do you see the parity increasing what we saw last year where you're going to get more of these Florida Atlantics making these runs? Or do you think, this is a year? Do you think that was a one-off? Do you think it's more often than not, it's going to be the blue bloods at the end of the day?
No, I don't think so this year. I don't think it'll be the case this year. I think there'll be a lot of upsets this year in the tournament. I'm not sure if FAU is going to make it to the Final Four again. I'm not going to go out on that much of a limb because nobody saw that coming. I remember being at FAU in Boca last year on January 31st and looking at Dusty May and being like, hey, maybe you'll make the tournament. Maybe you'll hold on and make the tournament. And I think he agreed, like, hopefully I'll make the tournament. But, he didn't see himself going to the Final Four or anything like that. But I could see, again, you could see some team like, a Dayton, an Oklahoma, who knows? I mean, some of these teams, again, that we don't think are legitimate Final Four. Wisconsin, who's probably the second best team in the Big Ten right now. A Utah State. Yeah, like, who knows? I just don't think there's dominant teams, and we've seen it, right? Like, Purdue's good. They got the best player in the country in Zach Edey. Kansas can't really shoot it, and they're not deep, but they have a Hall of Fame coach. but I could see them getting knocked out in the second round. Arizona, my alma mater, they're really good, but like, are they unbeatable? Heck no. I mean, no, absolutely not. They lost at Stanford, who's not a very good team. Now, these are road venues. Most of them that these top teams are losing. But no, Arizona lost to FAU a couple of weeks ago, right before the holiday, the Christmas break. They lost in Vegas in a pro Arizona crowd. And then FAU turns around right after that, and they lose at Florida Gulf Coast, who's terrible. They had 2 Division I wins at that time. And then they lose last week again at Charlotte. So it just, and they've also lost at home to Bryant. So like, it just goes to show you again, how fragile it is in college basketball, a little more than college football, I think, because you got so many games, that's part of it. In football, you're getting up for 1 game a week. In college basketball, you've got, 2, maybe 3 games in a week. And it's a little bit, I think, harder to stay focused and not look past a game to the next one than it is in football.
So looking at the national landscape, Jeff, on that note, not trying to put you on the spot here, but when we talk Final Four, I mean, again, you mentioned Purdue. It's funny, we look at these rankings, Purdue, number 1, Houston, number 2. They both lost last night, right, in upset fashion. But if you had to narrow it down, if you have 4 that you're like right now you feel good about locking in, or maybe you've got 6 or 8 teams, who are those teams on top of your mind? You're like, I feel really good they're going to make a run, go to the Final Four. Or is that a silly question because it's just a crapshoot and we have no idea?
I mean, no, it's not ridiculous. It's just like, I don't have utmost confidence in anybody.
I'm not asking you for the gambling numbers. I'm just asking for a best guess.
Yeah, I mean, I like Kentucky, and I never thought I'd say that going into the year, but I like Kentucky. I still like Purdue. I still like Houston. I still like Arizona. I like Marquette. I like UConn. Carolina and Duke are in the mix there. Kansas, I don't think can win it all. Like, a lot of, there's some of these teams, I just don't think Kansas can win it all because I don't think they shoot it well enough to win it all and have enough depth. I think they got 4 dudes that they're relying on. To me, you need point guard play, you need enough shooting, and you need a pretty good coach, and if you have a great coach, that makes it even better. So, I still think there's 10, 12 teams that can win the whole thing, but I think there's like 30 teams that can win 4 straight and get to the Final Four.
Jeff, is there a better 2 days in sports than the first 2 days of March Madness?
No. I mean, not when it delivers, right? I mean, there's sometimes when a day just doesn't deliver, the buzzer beaters and the upsets. But when you have a couple, I remember years ago in Tampa, I had one day and I try to jump around and see as many games I can. So I don't like to sit there on the off day. So I was in Tampa and I saw 4 upsets in the day, 4 straight. And I remember I was writing at the time, and first one happens and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna write a story and then I'll be done for the rest of this session. I could just watch the second game and enjoy it. Second game happens, upset, right again. Then I'm like, all right, I'm done. Second session, gonna just relax tonight, right? Third game, upset, gotta write again. Fourth game, upset. Had to do a whole wrap up on the day. But again, it's a blast. Like that's the beauty of the tournament. I think everybody, that's what you want in the first week, right? You want that first weekend to be about Cinderella stories, buzzer beaters, upsets. And then generally what you want are the big boys to advance to the Final Four.
Jeff Goodman, a legend in his own right. Fantastic work. Jeff, I've watched from afar for so long. Love what you do, man. Again, I would say for my money's worth, you're the best in the business when it comes to college basketball. Again, I mentioned top of show, what you have going on, but let folks know what you're doing, where to find you. The Field of 68. Let folks, I was watching that last night, and I see you guys have a newsletter you can subscribe to. So give everybody just an idea of what's going on, how they can follow you, all the exciting stuff you guys have rocking right now.
Yeah, we started 3 years ago, myself and Rob Doster, and it basically fills a void in college basketball. Every single night, we have Field of 68 After Dark on, 11 o'clock Eastern, streaming on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it now, YouTube. It's on Sirius Radio as well. We have all sorts of other things, like you said, a newsletter delivered to your email every single morning. We have other podcasts, myself and Robbie Hummel do a pod every single week, where actually I have to pay up a bet since I went to Arizona. He went to Purdue. Purdue beat Arizona a few weeks ago. The bet, Chris, was that I have to wear Robbie Hummel's Purdue jersey for a day. But the worst part is, and he did this after the fact. It was a sly move by Hummel. He said, he put it in afterwards that I can't wear an undershirt under it. So I just got to go, so I'm trying to lift weights over here in between, games or whatever. So I don't make myself look too ridiculous when I have to do this at the Final Four in Arizona. It's not going to be pretty. Also write for the Messenger, also do a show every weekday with Doug Gottlieb on Stadium from 1 till 1:30 Eastern. So a lot of hoops, and I appreciate you having me on. And hopefully, again, SEC is fun right now in hoops, really fun.
Jeff, you're the man. I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the college basketball season. We will definitely do it again soon, though, my friend. I appreciate you.
You got it, man.
Okay, that was Jeff Goodman, a legendary conversation. Truly appreciate him taking the time. Guys, that being said, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, your questions, your comments, your voicemails, we're going to get into all that much more as we continue to break down everything happening today in the world of sports, the SEC in particular. We'll get after it on the other side of this break, guys. You're tuned in to SEC Unfiltered Live.
Yo, you think Dallas' Power 4 gonna drop 30 tomorrow?
Boy, you tripping.
Did you see his mom made a post about going to the game?
What? Hold up. His mama gonna be there?
He's been averaging like 34 points a game when she's there.
At least 40 when she be on that Jumbotron.
He don't like to let his mama down.
Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Cash in on your sports fandom with Prize Picks.
SEC Unfiltered Live is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Go download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com. And when you do, use the promo code SECU to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is the simplest fantasy game on the market, focused around prop total entries. You pick 2 to 6 players, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. Prize Picks has no sharks, optimizers, or mass multi-entry. It's literally just you against the projection. They also allow mixed sport entries. So, for example, you can take the over on LeBron, parlay with the under on Mahomes. They've got college sports, pro sports, literally anything and everything you can think of. They have got it over at Prize Picks. They also have a slick, easy-to-use mobile app, both in the App Store and Google Play, and they're rated 4.8 stars in the App Store with rave reviews. So many fans and listeners of SEC Unfiltered have made tons of money with our friends at Prize Picks, and you should as well. So again, go download the Prize Picks app or head over to prizepicks.com, and when you do, use that promo code SECU to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. We're also brought to you by our friends over at MyBookie. When your money's on the line, choose a trusted sports book that gives you tools to win, like MyBookie. At MyBookie, it doesn't matter if your team is up or down. You can easily cash out or bet the game live to come out on the winning side. Use MyBookie for daily odds boosts, same-game parlays, and take advantage of huge prize pool contests. Every single sack, fumble, and touchdown is another chance to hit payday. To get started, go to mybookie.ag, and on your first deposit, use promo code SECU to grab a deposit match up to $1,000. Try the MyBookie money bag as well to grab a potential Super Bowl frontrunner at long shot odds, plus 38,000 on the Eagles and Chiefs. You won't find odds like that anywhere else. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. Finally, SEC Unfiltered Live is brought to you by our friends over at Roback. Guys, if you haven't heard of Roback before, it's time to check them out. It's safe to say I'd bet on these guys any day of the week because I absolutely love their gear. I couldn't be more pumped to work with Roback. It's simply some of the most comfortable gear that I own. From the performance polos to the hoodies and the joggers, it's some of the best fit and best feel around. Roback's performance hoodies are some of the best pieces of clothing I've ever worn. I can't emphasize how soft these things are with great stretch and breathability. They're simply some of the best hoodies out there. Odds are, guys, if you see me during football season, baseball season, basketball season, or just here on SEC Unfiltered Live, you'll more than likely see me in a Roback hoodie. Secondly, guys, Roback's performance polos, they're some of the most comfortable polos out there. They're moisture wicking with 4-way stretch, making them perfect for a game day, and they have the perfect fit. With crisp collars that don't lose their shape, I could not recommend these polos more. In all honesty, guys, Roback's been gaining traction big time. I'm sure you've seen them. They've been working with some of college football's biggest stars, such as Alabama's quarterback Jalen Milroe and former LSU head coach Ed Orgeron. So go check them out now and use the promo code SECU on Roback.com for a generous 20% off your first order. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. 20% off all bottoms, Q-zips, hoodies, and more with the promo code SECU. Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back. Final 18 minutes or so here on the show. The daily mailbag segment has officially begun, taking your questions, comments, and voicemail, guys. We'll power through this last 20 minutes of the show. We'll start it off with a voicemail. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it.
Hey, doing, Chris? This is Luke here again. Just wanted to call about the South Carolina game the other night. Looks like kind of got boat raced in the second half, and just kind of wanted to know your thoughts on how panicked you are about the Gamecocks. I know it's still early, but just looking at the remaining schedule, I mean, you got Kentucky once and then Tennessee twice. I mean, I think if you really want to boost your resume and talk about, serious contenders for the tournament, I mean, I think you got to have at least one of those three to have a good resume and feel comfortable. I know the SEC is a great conference and it's getting better, but I really think you got to have one of those three. A good win against Mississippi State. I watched that game last night, Mississippi State and Tennessee, and I mean, Mississippi State's going to be a problem for a lot of teams in the SEC. I mean, they just got some bruisers with Bell and Tolu Smith and Matthews. I mean, they're the most physical team in the SEC. But yeah, it's just gonna be interesting, and just wanted to know your thoughts on South Carolina, on how panicked you are about their resume. Thank you.
Luke, I appreciate the voicemail, my friend. I'm not necessarily panicking about South Carolina just because of one game. I also, admittedly, Luke, I came into this season with very, very realistic expectations for South Carolina. And I think there's probably a lot of Gamecock folks that have let, what the expectations were. They've sort of let that go by the wayside in the standpoint of because of the way you've started. You should expect an NCAA tournament appearance or what have you. I still would say NIT is a great season. I still think making the NIT is a great season for this basketball team, for this basketball program. I absolutely do think it is a great season. So I don't know if folks are going to feel the same way just because of the start and what is possible and what potential there is. I don't know. I don't know if folks are going to feel the same way, but I'm not necessarily hitting the panic button. It's just one game. Like you said, it's one game. Guys, we'll dive into it. I appreciate that voicemail. Luke, if you want to call in, be part of the show, you can do so. 843-790-3372 and leave us your voicemails there. Let's get into questions. Dave Garrick says, Bama should hire Pete Carroll as a transitional coach. Plus, there is no buyout. Interesting. George Mott says, who wants to follow Saban? Nobody. It's just a tough gig, man. Yeah, it's big shoes to fill. Who wants to know says, I hope Lane Kiffin will take the head coaching job at Bama. Roll Tide, roll. Bama for life. Who wants to know? I appreciate you commenting, my friend. Welcome. He wants Lane Kiffin. Ruination says Norvell is heating up. Yeah, it seems like Mike Norvell is becoming one of the top names, no doubt. Spur your enthusiasm. The thing about Bama's list, or at least the fans' list, is they're only targeting guys who have really good things going on in their program right now. Will spur your enthusiasm. I mean, being a winner and being a top of the, at the top of the sport, that's one of the requirements. It would make no sense if Bama did not hire a guy like that. It would make absolutely zero sense. So let's go to earlier in the show. And I appreciate you, by the way, spur your enthusiasm tuning in. Randy Bell said, it won't be Lane Kiffin or Dabo Swinney. Okay. All right. I would throw the bag. I would throw the bag at Lane. Semi-whole fan for life says, Mike, I appreciate you. Welcome to the show. Mike Norvell to beat Bama and FSU fans will cry harder than when they missed the playoffs. Indeed. Cody Larmer says, my Vols got beat, but fun night last night. Like I said a few days ago, the winner of the SEC could have up to 5 losses. I think in 2018, Auburn and Tennessee tied with 13-5 records. I could see that too, Cody. I mean, it's just the league is so deep this year. Austin Gregory, college football needs Saban more than Saban ever needed college football. He would be the unanimous vote for college football commissioner when college football inevitably breaks away from the NCAA. He'd be a great fit for the head of the table. Let's see. Ethan K, I remember the first national championship I remember as a kid when he won at LSU. I remember thinking that he looks like he will get a lot more, and no idea he would one day pass Bryant as the GOAT. Yeah, I mean, he's the undisputed GOAT, man. He is the undisputed GOAT. Justin Kyle says, I wonder if the changing of the transfer portal NIL influenced the decision sooner. I think, Justin, again, it'd be, as we talked top of the show, I think it'd be naive to think that Nick Saban wasn't influenced by that. You know what I mean? Like, he's the one, as fans, it's frustrating to follow. Imagine being the coach who builds relationships with these players and cultivates relationships and, like, really puts in the work and the effort, to get kids to the school and keep them there. And, then you're dealing with an NIL, and it becomes a lot, man. It's just a lot. So I think it'd be naive to think that didn't play a major part. So, Justin Kyle, it won't be Dabo at Bama, I'm pretty sure. We'll see. We'll see. Coach Ford says, we better up Shane Beamer's contract before Bama steals him. Dakota, Vol for Life, what's up, man? Says, the word on the street is they expect to have someone hired in the next 72 hours. Yeah, I mean, I've heard that as well. By end of week. Let's see. Dwayne says, Ryan Day is a hot name today also. That'd be an interesting hire. I don't know they'd go that direction, but I don't know. Austin Gregory says, the best job in college football is Kentucky. Win 7 games a year, have a 9 to 10 win season once every 5 years while scheduling cupcakes, and you're set for life. I mean, Austin, I'm just going to say this. Could you not also say, I mean, here's the thing, Austin. Are there not a couple of middle-of-the-pack SEC teams that are like the same exact way? If you average 7 to 8 wins a year and win 10 games in a year every 5 years, bro, the list of schools that'll fire you in the SEC for that is actually pretty short. Where can you not do that, Austin? You can't do that at Bama, Georgia, LSU, I guess Texas A&M now, right? That's why they fired Jimbo. They were averaging 8-4. But, I mean, that works at Kentucky. That works at Mississippi State. That works at Arkansas. It used to work at Ole Miss. I don't know that it does now. So maybe they're one of those teams that doesn't. But I think after Lane Kiffin, it probably will revert back to that. It works at South Carolina. It works at Missouri. So there's a lot of schools that are like that. There ain't many out there that have 10-win expectations, 10-win minimum every year. You know what I mean? Travie, do we think Milroe enters into the portal now? He'd be crazy to do that, Travie. He'd be crazy. Bama players have 30 days. All due respect, where is he going? Where is Jalen Milroe going to go? You know, I'm not hating on Jalen Milroe. I'm not doing that, but at the same time, man, like, where is he going to go? I mean, do you think there's a bunch of schools out there knocking down the door for Jalen Milroe to be their starting quarterback? I don't know that there are. Coach Ford, I'd take Spurrier over Saban every day, all day. I mean, I get why you're saying that, Coach Ford, because Spurrier coached at South Carolina. And that's fine. That's your choice, Coach Ford. Saban's the greatest coach of all time. I mean, he's the greatest coach of all time. So I love Steve Spurrier. No question. I love Steve Spurrier. I wouldn't take anybody over Nick Saban. I wouldn't. I wouldn't take anybody over Nick Saban. So maybe that's just me. Justin, thoughts on South Carolina's new tight ends coach? Who is the new tight ends coach? Who is their new tight ends coach? I did not see that. Wow, Dan Lanning on the Pat McAfee show. Went on their show. How about that? Hell of a guest to get on. He said, quote, getting your name in the conversation for the Alabama job speaks to what we're doing here in Oregon. This decision has been made since I took this job, and I love what we have here. There you go. Dan Lanning. Straight from the head coach's mouth on the Pat McAfee show. How about it? How about it? But yeah, guys, I think there's going to be a major ripple effect. Our good friend Brad Crawford posted this. Shane Beamer apparently going on airwaves this morning. Quote, Nick's first day in Tuscaloosa was the day he interviewed me for an assistant job. It was myself, Kevin Steele. Saban had like 3 coaches there that day. He was interviewing for jobs. He ended up hiring Ron Middleton. Then about a month later, Coach Spurrier called me, and the rest was history. Beamer said this on head coaches feeling pressure to win early in tenures now more than ever. Quote, patience is thinning. You're expecting to win now. I'd love to be here at South Carolina for a long, long time. But I think in a lot of ways, you see coaches who want to get out and move or stay ahead of the posse or whatever that might be. But you know what you're signing up for when you get in this profession. Indeed. Interesting comments there from Shane Beamer. Let's see. Newman says, got to be Kiffin coming over, right? Seems like he's been getting ready for it. You know, for the people that are saying, like, Kiffin just wouldn't, I think Kiffin would bail, bro. I think Kiffin would bail on Ole Miss. And I hate to say, like, I'm not pulling for that, but I could see it. I could see it. I could see it, absolutely. I could 110% see it. So, Coach Ford, there has never been a better in-game coach than Spurrier, nothing to do with USC. Coach Ford, there's never been a better offensive mind than Steve Spurrier. I've got Brad Lawing on record who has said that. But again, if you're just asking me point blank, who would I take today? Or who would I take? Saban's the GOAT, man. I love Spurrier. Saban's the GOAT. Saban's the GOAT. I have to give credit to Saban. I mean, dude, it's Saban won 7 national titles. Spurrier won 1. That really speaks to how great Saban is. Coach Ford says it's a great job for Dabo. Even if he failed, he can retire Jimbo style. He has other ventures to bring in money. He could retire. Justin, forget the name. He's from Texas A&M. He's taking Jody Wright's job, who is leaving to take the head coach at Murray State. I did not see this at all. I got to be honest with you, man. Admittedly, man, covering the entire SEC and focusing on SEC storylines as a whole and things that move the needle, admittedly, like I don't keep up with the day in, day out of South Carolina nearly as much anymore. And it's just because, again, it's an interesting perspective, guys, and an interesting concept when, it's the 80-20 rule where you really focus on the 20% of things that really move the needle and people care about, and you talk about versus the 80% that's more like fluff, right? Like, for example, I don't know, LSU hiring a new defensive coordinator, obviously Nick Saban retiring, Quinn Ewers returning to Texas versus, a player changed his number. This guy's changing positions and he's not like a star, right? Or you hired an offensive analyst. Like, in the grand scheme of things, nobody really cares outside of the group, the core diehards. And that's great. But when you have limited space for topics, yeah, you don't really touch on those things. So that's why I have not. That's why I have not seen it. So, anyways, let's see. Again, guys, I want to say thank you yet again to our good friend Jeff Goodman, Goodman Hoops, man. That was a legendary conversation. Dusty Rhodes says, wow, this is new. Leave the country for a bit, come back. No more Gamecock talk. Congrats on the new business. Did you just give up on us? LOL. Dusty Rhodes, I've gone down this road, no pun intended, many times. You can go back and watch the YouTube videos. You can go back and listen to the podcast. I've talked about this, man. Simply put, a business decision. It's not because I'm no longer a South Carolina guy or a fan. I just wanted to open up the opportunities for my content and my business to 15 other fan bases, my friend. So, again, if you want more information, you can shoot me a DM, what have you. But, I mean, I've talked about this. Hell, I did a conversation. Go to our YouTube literally yesterday or 2 days ago. We posted a video conversation I did. I mean, I've gone on record over and over and over again explaining this, the why behind it all. But Dusty Rhodes, as short as I can possibly condense it, it was a business move and a business decision, and one that I had been meditating on for almost 2 years, and I'm thrilled about it, truly. So that being said, I'm still a South Carolina fan, but this is an SEC show now, not a Gamecock show. So you are correct there. And again, it's all love, and I appreciate you asking, man. But and again, there's literally videos and podcasts, and if you want me to send them to you, Dusty Rhodes, just hit me up, let me know. But there's plenty of it out there that you can go to and reference to, and it's just like the full why behind everything that's happened and what exactly happened, if you will. But yeah, very, very excited, very excited. I mean, dude, I'm telling you guys, I'm having a blast. Like I'm really genuinely having a blast. It's fun talking about these big storylines. It's fun talking about all of the great, fun, exciting things going on in the world of the SEC, and of course college football. We got baseball upcoming, and basketball's in full swing. And it's a really good time. It's a really, really good time. So again, guys, thank you all so much. Thank you all to those who are here supporting, showing love. We had a ton of people tuned in today. Thank you all to those that tuned in. Please be sure. We're about to hit 5,000 subscribers on YouTube. For the longest time, I did not pay much attention to YouTube in regards to making clips and stuff like that. I didn't start putting emphasis on YouTube, guys, until like middle of October of last year, which shame on me for that. Shame on me. But we are now. We're growing on YouTube every single day. We're about to hit 5,000 subscribers. So, guys, if you do not mind, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell icon so you get notifications when we go live. Check us out on podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast at SEC Unfiltered. And, of course, guys, we're on social media. Everywhere you get your content, it is content bleeding out of the eyeballs. Guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. Appreciate each and every single one of you. Have a great rest of your Thursday. And we will talk to you all tomorrow.